Hey, I'm Russ.
And I'm Steve.
Growing up in the 80s, we were introduced to video games, movies, and technology that made a lasting impression on us and forever enriched our lives.
I think I'm gonna cry.
It's been a fascinating journey to be a part of, one that we constantly treasure.
Arr, booty.
Our goal is simple: share our magical moments of discovery and geek out with lovely folks, just like you.
Achievement unlocked.
So if you crave pixel goodness, memorable moments, and experiences that make your inner child do the happy dance, you've come to the right place.
Let's do this.
Welcome to Joygasm.
Ah, yeah.
And welcome back to Joygasm, where we talk about video games, movies, and pop culture. I'm Russ, Xbox Live Toaster 360, and I will be your solo host as we careen into episode 43 on this October 21st, 2017. To get the most out of Joygasm, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on joygasm.tv and soundcloud.com/joygasmtv. Also, for exclusive access and some sweet goodies, check us out at patreon.com/joygasm. And no matter which platform you use to enjoy the show, please drop us a subscription, thumbs up, or a review. It helps us build awareness, which we appreciate very much. Steve couldn't be here. He is out of state attending a buddy's wedding, which is too bad because we have an exciting show. We have special guest, animation lead Raymond Crook from Double Fine, joining me to gab about Psychonaughts 2, his career as an animator, and what it's like to work for the legendary Tim Schafer. But first, the day of reckoning is at hand. We have a winner for our SNES Classic Mini giveaway. Before I say who won, please note that we do in fact have another SNES Classic Mini giveaway that will commence on November 1st. So if you didn't win, you will have another chance to win. And we are sweetening the prize by adding in a SNES Classic wireless controller with the SNES Classic Mini. So keep your eyes peeled for when we drop instructions on how to enter for that on November 1st. And now, the winner is Marcos at Helvetica Standard, which is spelled Helvetica, as you would expect it to be, and then the STNDRD at Helvetica Standard. Congrats to you, buddy, on winning the giveaway drawing. We will contact you for your address so we can get this bad boy shipped ASAP. If Marcos doesn't respond within 72 hours, his win will be forfeited and we will do another random drawing. So make sure you respond to us, Marcos. It is in your best interest. This next segment is made possible in part by our patrons, and I'd like to give a shout out to two of them in particular. PJ Ryder and Sean Byers, we appreciate your support. You guys rock. Now on to the main event. I'm excited to introduce all of you to Raymond Crook, the animation lead at Double Fine Productions. For the uninitiated, Double Fine was founded by the amazing Tim Schafer, who is the brainchild of many graphic adventures including Full Throttle, Grim Fandango, and Day of the Tentacle. This particular animator has worked on Psychonauts, Brutal Legend, and Sesame Street Once Upon a Monster, among a great many others. He is currently working on Psychonauts 2, but was kind enough to take a break to chat with us. Ray, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate it.
It has been a long time. I know that reaching out to you, we haven't spoken in quite some time. I think it was about 15 years, but I just wanted the listeners to know that you and I actually attended the same college together. Right. And ever since then, we've kind of parted our ways and set out on our own adventures, but I'm glad that we're able to reconnect here.
Yeah. It. We kind of keep up a little bit on Facebook and to try and understand what each other is still doing. And but it's great to talk to you again.
I know I gave you a brief intro, but would you like to start out with an introduction as to just who you are and provide a background as to what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, you said who I was, and I work for Double Fine Productions, which is a lot of you probably have heard of the company, but if you haven't, it's a independent developer in San Francisco, and it was founded by Tim Schafer. He left LucasArts and started this company, Double Fine, about let's see, it's been, I think we're going on 17-year anniversary now, getting close to 17 years in business. And I have been with the company for 16 years.
Oh, wow. So you're actually one of the OGs almost of the company.
Yeah, there's a few of us still left, sort of the, kind of the old original crew that worked on like our first game, Psychonauts, that are still there. And it was my first job out of college. Kind of found out about the company. Actually, Grim Fandango had been released. I don't know if you remember when I was in school, and you may remember this. When Grim Fandango was released, we had an art exhibit. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that, actually. Yeah. Wow. That's a blast from the past. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I was introduced to Tim's games, actually. I had not played any of them. I mean, he had done, he'd worked on the Monkey Island series, and then and he did Day of the Tentacle, co-directed that game, which I had not played, and then Full Throttle. And then when Grim came out, they did that art show, and then I saw it, and I was just like, wow, you can actually like make really beautiful things in video games, and not thinking I'd ever actually work for him or with him, but that's sort of how I was introduced to Tim and Tim's games.
I've got to tell you that Full Throttle is hands down one of my absolute favorite games.
Awesome.
I remember playing that all the time on my PC way back in the day. I love that game so much. Actually, I love the main theme song. That
opening. Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it?
I had a buddy who, on my birthday, he actually found out who the band was that was hired to do that, and he bought me the actual album of that band. So I was playing that over and over and over again. It was so cool.
Yeah, was it the Polecat? I forgot the name. What was the name? I forgot the name. I should know. Have you played? I don't know if you played the remaster or not.
I have not.
It just came out. I don't know how many. Let's see, maybe 3 months ago or 4. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's been 5 months. Anyway, check it out. Or if your audience is interested, you can actually get it on for the iPad. And it actually plays
sweet.
really well on iOS. It's actually it's a perfect platform actually for it. But you can get on. I think you can get on the PS4 as well and PC. But it's I'm pretty proud of it actually, how it turned out. So if you want to kind of revisit it, and the thing is you can switch to the old version or the new version. So if you want to just go back and play it the way you remembered it, you can do that, or you can play the remaster. But
that's
the
awesome.
Way, because we did. I worked on Day of the Tentacle, also the remaster, and when we were trying to come up with the what it should look like, and what like how far should we veer from the original, we really didn't want to. What we wanted it to look like was how you remembered it when you played it, right? Because
sure,
back then you're just, even though the graphics were limited, you're still blown away by them, and but now when you look at it, you're like, oh, it's really pixelated. But we wanted it to just look like the way you remembered it when you played it, which you don't remember the pixelation, when you played it originally.
Well, and our screens were a lot smaller too back then. I mean, nowadays we have such huge screens. Of course, the pixels are going to look stretched as a result.
Yeah, and then I think Day of the Tentacle, I can't remember Full Throttle too. They wanted to support 4K. I think they ended up supporting 4K. So yeah, you had to do really high res draw overs of every frame that was done of the original animation. That's what we ended up doing for that. But I don't know if I'm getting off on a tangent on that. But
No. I absolutely love talking about those games, because those games back in the day, especially like Full Throttle, for instance, like when I found out that I think it was Mark Hamill who did the voice of the main character. Is that right?
He did a voice of not of Ben, who was the main biker guy. He did a voice for one of the, was it Corley? I can't remember which. It was one of the other guys.
It's been so long since I played it. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but the other thing is you might find interesting if you were a fan of it is that they have commentary. So you can turn commentary on at certain points. And so you can actually listen to some commentary.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of interactive. You get to learn a lot about the history of the game and how it was made. And so that's pretty cool. So it's commentary from the original guys that originally worked on it.
That's very cool. And it's really cool that you, as well as others, were able to actually, collaborate on the remastered edition. I don't know. I think I would be geeking out constantly if I was working on a game that I used to play as like a kid, and now all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I'm actually able to touch it.
Yeah. It was kind of cool. They got to go up to the archives up at the ranch, and try to find the original tapes, like all the backup tapes, so they could get all of the original data for it. And so I didn't get to go, but Tim and a couple other people went up and they were able to go through those old archives. And so it was kind of neat. It was fun to see the video of them, digging around in those boxes and stuff.
Oh, sure.
It was like an archaeological dig up there.
So which games have you worked on total during your tenure at Double Fine?
Yeah, so let's see. You mentioned three big ones, which was Psychonauts, Brutal Legend, and then Once Upon a Monster. Then I worked on Costume Quest, Broken Age, Act 1 and 2. I was an animation lead on that one. And then I worked on an iOS game, which was called Middle Manager of Justice.
Okay.
It was kind of like a free-to-play game. Everyone was doing the free-to-play, so we thought we'd give it a shot. And it actually turned out it's a really beautiful game, and I'm really proud of it. And that was really fun because I had never done any 2D work like professionally. And so I had a little bit of downtime, and I wanted to, we animated it in Flash, and I kind of wanted to learn it, and I wanted to try it. So I just said, hey, can I help out on that game? And I had the time, and they needed the help. And so I was able to pick up Flash and do this. So that was all 2D. And then I ended up on a game called Hack and Slash, which was also a 2D game.
That's a cool name. I like that.
Yeah, Hack and Slash. That was pretty fun. And then Once Upon a Monster, I did a little bit of work on Massive Chalice. That was another Kickstarter game that we did that was led by Brad Muir. Let's see. There was one game that we did a prototype for, and then we actually did ship it, called Autonomous.
Okay.
Which shipped. It was shipped for the Leap. Do you remember? I don't know if you know what the Leap controller is, which is like this little. It was kind of like. I think it's still around, but it would detect your hands, and then it could detect your fingers, and it would track your fingers.
Really?
But, yeah. Anyway, we did a game called Autonomous for that. It was a smaller project. I know I'm forgetting some. I tried to think about all the games.
Oh yeah, I remember there was a game that you, for some reason, I seem to remember on your Facebook page you were talking about how the company was creating multiple games. And this may have been what you were referring to with the mobile games. But I remember there was a particular title that if I remember correctly, it sounded like you really took the lead on, like just in terms of being the brainchild of that particular game. And then there were like 3 or 4 others that were going on simultaneously, and they all just kind of dropped together. Does that ring a bell at all?
Let's see. So we do we do a thing called, and I can get into this later in more detail, but at the company we do a thing called Amnesia Fortnight, which is
okay.
we stop working on all the current titles that we're working on for 2 weeks, and then we do prototyping. And you can, if you want, you can pitch your game, and if it's picked, then you can actually lead the prototype for that. But I actually have never led one of those. What I did do, and I don't know if this is what you were thinking about, but we did a game not too long ago, which was a game for PSVR called Psychonauts and the Rhombus of Ruin.
Okay.
And I was the co-lead on that game. So I worked with Chad Dawson. We were the two leads on that, and that came out. I don't know, it was 6 months ago, maybe something like that. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say I wasn't the brainchild on that, but I definitely was a big part of the design, and then I was also ended up being the art director on it, and then the animation lead. But
well, that enabled you to really stretch your wings out. I mean, like typically it sounds like your kind of your day in day out responsibilities hover around animation. So the fact that you got to do some art direction, that sounds cool.
Yeah, that was fun. What happened was we had a lead on that project, and he ended up leaving after we hadn't even come out of really prototyping, and so we were left without a lead on the project, and so Tim asked myself and then Chad if we would take on the role, and he's a programmer, so he's an engineer. And then I'm coming from animation art side. So it kind of worked out pretty well. There was things that he could handle and things that I could handle. And so it actually worked out nicely. Except I did leave. I moved away from the Bay Area when we had about 3 or 4 months left on that project. So not the best timing. Something I never thought I would ever do, but I ended up needing to do that, and so he kind of took on the role as the lead to finish that project.
Okay,
but it was a great experience to be able to be really be part of the design team, be part of everything really, and then also art direct. I'd done some art direction, a very small thing. When I did, you mentioned. Once Upon a Monster, which was a game that we ended up doing with Sesame Street. Actually, we kind of brought some characters that we had developed, and Warner Brothers had the licenses for the Sesame Street games, and so we had talked to them, and we decided, hey, let's maybe we can collaborate and do something together. And when we shipped when we created the DLC for that. We had I think our art director had moved on to another project, and so I took that on. So I art directed the DLC, and so that was kind of where I got my feet wet in art direction.
Were you able to? Sorry to interrupt you, but were you able to actually go visit the set of Sesame Street for reference?
So that was actually a really cool experience. So we didn't visit the set, but we went to Henson Workshop.
Oh, that's so cool!
Yeah, that was actually made it worth that whole, because that was a hard project. But all projects are hard. I mean, video games are hard. You know that they're hard to make. But that made it really all worth it because Warner Brothers flew us to New York. Tim and I went out with the project lead, who's Nathan Martz. And then we met Scott Campbell out there, who was doing character design for it. And then we got to go to Henson Workshops and meet the master puppet builders that build the puppets.
Oh my gosh!
It was so awesome. Cool. Yeah, and they said, you can see anything you want. Just let us know, what do you want to see, and I mean it was an awesome experience. I felt really bad because I didn't take any pictures because they're kind of strict about the picture situation. It's like you can take a picture of the puppet, but it has to have someone's arm has to be in it. So someone has to be kind of articulating. But then if it's not the puppeteer who normally does it, then you can't have them in the picture. So there were all these restrictions. So I was really nervous about taking pictures. So I just took a lot of notes. We asked them to see, we got to see pretty much all of the main Sesame Street characters, and the woman who was the lead puppet builder, she was showing us, how they're built. Like it was actually really, really helpful and just really, really fun.
I was going to say, like, as an animator, I mean, you must really, obviously you're on the digital side of things, but looking at something that's physical, that's tangible, that you can actually articulate with your hands. I mean, I'm sure that in its own way, that was kind of a gold mine for you.
Yeah, it was really helpful. I actually really appreciate the notes that I took. I still look through that little notebook and see, like she talked about, like what was it, like Ernie, and how they built the neck for Ernie. And they just used like a coffee can, and Just all these little tricks that they had, and I remember when she was saying that they have a lot of problems now because everything's high definition. You can see because they used to just pin like the noses on. They would have sort of the blank Muppet, and they would put like a different nose and the different eyes on, and the different ears and hair. They would just pin those on. But she said now because everything shows up, it's difficult to just quickly do it. You have to sew stuff on, or you have to hide everything, because all of those little pins would start showing up.
Sure.
And it was just cool. Like she shows Cookie Monster, because Cookie Monster was in the game, and she showed us how they did the googly, because he has those googly eyes. And it's just basically this black metal disc that has a nail stuck in it, offset, and that's how it like jiggles around. And just these really little simple solutions that were just fun to see, and because we really wanted the animation, we wanted to feel like puppets. We didn't want to go too far from that. We wanted them to feel like the actual characters that you would see on Sesame Street, and so. They're sort of they're the rod puppets. They use the rod on the hands. And
right.
So I wanted to see, what do the arms move like? Because they're a lot of them just had the floppy arms, and she was showing us like the beads that they put into the arms to get that floppy look. And so we really wanted to keep that style when we did the game. We didn't want to articulate the eyes, and so she talked to us quite a bit about how the puppeteers. Puppeteer, actually do the puppeteering, and we as animators tried to take that information and almost imagine that we were a puppeteer. I mean, we are in a way, right? But almost imagine that your hand was up in the digital puppet and manipulating it. And so it was fun, and we did we had a puppet making night when we knew that we were going to be doing that game with Sesame Street. We organized a puppet making night for the team, and so I went out and bought a bunch of the supplies, and then we went on. I went online and found some guy that he shows you how to do a simple like hand and rod puppet, and we had a couple of people bring sewing machines. One guy's mom, this guy Levi, his mom came and she did, because we didn't know how to sew, and so she helped us sew the puppets and everything. It was awesome. I have a lot of fond memories of that game.
Well, especially coming full circle, like I'm sure as a kid, you probably watched the program way back in the day, and now you coming in, being able to kind of peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and just see how they did everything. I mean, that's like a bucket list item for me anyway. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, it was a special experience that I actually really cherish that experience. And I still get Christmas cards from the Henson Company, which is really yeah. I don't know what we kind of befriended one of the. She just goes by Z. She works. I don't know if she still works there or not, but she worked in the for the organization, and she was a big Double Fine fan. And so, so when we were there, she came running out and was super excited to meet us, even though we were really excited to be there. And so so I get these Christmas cards, which is really fun. I don't know, it's just anything from Henson, it's just exciting to get. I'm reading a biography right now, a Jim Henson biography, which is pretty fascinating. And I've always been fascinated with puppets. Actually, it's something that I think when you work in digital, I think you kind of long for something physical.
Sure.
I mean, you might feel that way. I think a lot of people do. And I think maybe that's why I really appreciate stop motion animation. I think a lot of animators do that work in digital. I think that there is something really special and magical about that medium, about something that is real and tactile, Mm-hmm. And maybe I got off on a little bit of a tangent, and maybe I can talk about, I don't know if you want me to do that now, I can talk about kind of how I ended up in animation.
Sure, you can go for it. Oh, one of the things I was going to say really quickly, just to bounce off of what you just said, was I, as a kid, I received actually the stuffed animal that doubled also as a puppet. There was a little area where you could put your hand into the back of the head of this little dog puppet thing, and I lost track of it. Fast forward to now where I'm a dad, and I end up finding this thing, and my daughter loves it. So now I get to totally be a dork and give it a voice and interact with my daughter. Anyway, back to you.
It's the best. No, that's awesome. No, that's really awesome. I mean, there is something magical about them,
Yeah.
It's weird. They sort of become a real thing to the audience. But we were talking about, something tactile and something, quote, real. I mean, I don't know how real a puppet is, but
just something that's physical versus something that's digital. You work in a digital space constantly. And so you being able to actually get your hands on something that, like you said, is tactile, that's physical, I think that really broadens your horizons as an animator.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is helpful. I think it's just one more thing that you, another tool that you can use when you start animating something. Because so kind of to talk a little bit about how I got into it. As a kid, I always just, you may have been this. I think probably the listeners of this podcast probably can relate to this. Just growing up and watching, whether it's monster movies or sci-fi, and seeing the effects, the practical effects and the makeup effects, and just how that's just fascinating. I loved that stuff. I loved old horror movies, and I probably loved them mostly because of the monsters, and the makeup work, and the masks, and I remember asking a teacher when I was just, so I grew up in Utah, which is where I live now. That's when you're a kid, that might as well be, from California. That's like being on the moon. I mean, it seems like it's that far away,
Uh-huh.
And I remember asking a teacher, because I always enjoyed art, and I was like, I'm interested in special effects.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her saying, "Well, I think you just have to go to California." That's what that was what she told me, which was just kind of true. I mean, you probably have to go to one of the coasts. So anyway, the reason I mentioned that is because I was just always fascinated with it, and I thought I would always work in film. Once I got into school,
right?
I thought I had to work in film because that's what inspired me as a kid. I mean, I enjoyed video games as a kid, but as far as animation goes, it was film and special effects that really fascinated me. But then when I mentioned earlier that I saw the exhibit from Grim Fandango and just saw how beautiful the art was, and I was like, I think I could work in games.
Mm-hmm.
At least if I could work on games like this. I think that would fill that creative need that I had, and so anyway, I don't know if that's I don't know where I was going with that.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm always curious to hear about people's backgrounds as to just what acted as a catalyst for them as a kid moving forward into their careers and ultimately doing what they love to do. And it's always interesting to hear everybody has a different story or a certain walk of life. And while there are certain parallels, because I can relate to some of the things that you're talking about, but obviously I'm in a different capacity than you are creatively. And so, I always love to just sit back and listen to people just tell their tale.
Yeah. And I think it can be, I hope that it can be inspiring for somebody, somebody who maybe is, the internet has made the world much smaller. Mm-hmm. For sure. When I was trying to figure out, just like that teacher, when she said, what do I need to do? She's like, I don't know, go to California. That was the answer. I didn't know where to go from there. If I'd had the internet, I probably could have actually found something out. Found out some schools and things like that. And so the way I found the school that we went to, right? We went to Cogswell College, Cogswell Polytechnical College. I was. It was at Christmas time, and I was studying information systems. I mean, not to knock on information systems for people that enjoy that, but man, I was miserable. But it was the program that was off. It was a good program. It was offered at the local university. It was convenient. I had I had a little bit of a scholarship, so it wasn't very expensive. But I was, and I actually really enjoyed all of the, what are the classes like philosophy and psychology. What do they call those?
Like the GE or whatever?
Yeah, the GE courses. Yeah, yeah, those courses I loved. But then all the courses that were related to my actual field, I hated. So accounting.
You actually weren't even interested in animation as a kid growing up necessarily. It sounded like you were more kind of exploring this other avenue. Did you actually really sink your teeth into animation in college? Yeah.
So exactly. Yeah. So I always enjoyed art. Like art was something that some people have a talent for it. You can tell that they have a knack for it. And I definitely had that art gene, and so, I would enter art contests in junior high and in high school, and I was in AP arts. But as a career, that just wasn't really, at least I didn't know how that could ever be a career. It just didn't seem like a possibility back then. And so I was just like, that's just not where I'm going to go. So, so that I thought, okay, I liked computers. I thought they were fun. I liked games on computers. I liked playing games, and so I just thought that was just a practical thing. So it was a practical choice that I had made. But then realizing I was so miserable, I did know I had to do something else. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And so I just happened. It was just luck. Luck, I don't know if fate, I don't know if you believe in fate, then fate, or luck. I ran into a guy that I knew in high school who we weren't close or anything. I just kind of knew him, and I ran into him, and I was like, hey, what are you up to? And then he told me that he was at Cogswell, actually. And he said he was studying 3D animation. And Toy Story had come out just maybe a year before that or something. It was the first Toy Story, so the first real 3D animated film.
That was back in 1997 or something.
Yeah, let's see, it was at 97. So yeah, so that was so it would have been right around that time. And I remember when I saw that film, I don't know if you remember seeing that film, but when I saw that film, I was just completely blown away.
Totally. I was totally floored. Yeah.
Right? I just remember just grinning the entire time. And not just, it's a great film. it is all around, it's a great film, but also just, it was so new. It just blew me away. And I was kind of into computers at the time, because I was studying information system, a little bit of programming, even though I wasn't good at it. And then when he told me what he was doing, I was like, what? I'm going to make Toy Story. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know. At that point, I was still trying to figure out, okay, well, how would I do this? Because I was living at home. I didn't have any money. I just had a little part-time job and going to the local university, and no one in my family had gone off to college, had really left the state to go study. So it just didn't seem like something that I was capable of doing. So luckily, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she actually moved to Utah from California, from Northern California, specifically right from the area that the school was located in Sunnyvale. And so she was familiar with the area, and she didn't really have those sort of reservations or fears that I had. So she just like booked 2 plane tickets and got a rental car and said, we're going to go check out that school. And
good for her.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, I really do owe my career, or at least getting into my career, to her. Because I think I was I don't know if it was scared or if I was just hesitant, apprehensive. I guess those are maybe all good words to use.
Well, it's a big commitment. I mean, you're traveling, through multiple states to try something out that you're not sure how it's going to end up. I mean, yeah, that's a big commitment there.
Yeah, and I think my dad thought I was crazy. It's like, what are you doing? He's an engineer, right? So he studied automotive engineering and then worked for a company. They worked on jet engines and missile engines and stuff. So
wow.
So he's coming from a very different place, I guess.
He's literally a rocket scientist.
Yeah, that's right. I know, right? And that's just not. My brain just wasn't really designed for that, and so he thought. I think my mom was a little more understanding when I told her that that I wanted to move away and do this, and but then it's like then I need money, right? And I didn't have any money, and I'd never thought about taking student loans. That just seemed like a scary thing. I was always really risk adverse when it came to borrowing money, but I was able to talk them both into sort of co-signing like my first loan, so that I could get housing and pay the first semester.
You're not homeless while you're going to school. That's always a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's how. So if there's anyone out there who's I know there's a lot of people out there that would love to do this type of work, but it just doesn't seem possible. At least it didn't seem possible to me, but sometimes you just have to get a kick in the pants from either yourself or from somebody else, and you just go for it. And
what I think is truly incredible about that is the fact that I remember going into the Maya lab and watching you were actually working on your demo reel piece.
Okay,
and I've been looking forward to talking to you about this because it really has stayed with me as one of the high points of my tenure at Cogswell, which is I'm walking in and Ray is sitting there working on something which instantly catches my eye. And I remember asking you, I'm like, hey, so what do you got going on here? And you're like, well, I got this animation. I'm using this for my demo reel. And then so I asked if you could play it for me, and you started playing it. And all of a sudden I'm watching this like basically a short animated film going on, and I get verklempt watching it. It basically it's like these 2 stuffed animals, and one of them needs some of like the materials that the other stuffed animal has. And so the other one sacrifices itself basically to make this other stuffed animal happy. Dude, I remember that vividly because at the end of it, I'm just like, dude, this is why I went to this school to see this kind of stuff. I mean, it really truly was one of the most moving things. I mean, that was like on a Pixar level of storytelling, and there wasn't any kind of voiceover at all. You had some music playing with it.
Yeah.
But just the fact that it was a demonstration of your animation skills that was basically almost like pantomiming in a way. But I mean, I'm floored that you were not doing a lot of animation until you came to the school. I mean, that just makes that piece that much more impressive in my mind.
Yeah, I'm stoked that you totally remember that. That's great. That's awesome that you remember that. Yeah, I did that piece with a guy named Dave Russell, who had come to the school from Ohio, and we kind of had similar like dreams. We'd kind of grown up on Star Wars, and we had kind of similar hopes, I think, and. It's funny that you mentioned that. So that film, so Dave and I did that film. We decided instead of taking, I think it's the animation, it was called Character Animation 3 or something. we decided instead of doing that, we wanted to see if we could get permission to do a short film at school. And that was kind of going against the curriculum because at that time, they didn't do like a final project. I'm not sure what they do now, but so we got permission and we had an idea for that film. We kind of came up with that idea and we had worked together in another class, like on some kind of goofy commercial or something. And we worked well together and we trusted each other. And we both had sort of different skill sets in a way. And so they complemented each other. And yeah, so we just came up with that. And yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, that was that film that got us our job. So I've worked with Dave. So Dave works at Double Fine also.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I got the job, and then I'd only been there for, let's see, maybe 4 months. It might have been even less. Anyway, and they said, hey, do you know anyone else that does what you do? You know, that could, because I could do modeling, I could do rigging, and then some animation. Mm-hmm. I really got hired to do modeling and rigging because they had enough animators. But you got to get your foot in the door. And so I was working with Tim, so I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. Anyway, so I said, yeah, I know a guy, and then he came on, and he got the job, and we've worked together ever since. So we've been friends now. Let's see, we've been at the company for 16 years, 17. So it's like going on 20 years. About 20 years.
That's incredible.
Friends, you could even say collaborators. We've worked on projects together. We've sat next to each other, and yeah, when I moved from the studio to work remotely, that was tough to not have Dave there. You know, you got like he's kind of your partner. You know, he's like your creative partner that you can always trust, and
you have that creative synergy going between you two.
Yeah, and I just knew I could always trust him, and I knew he was always there for me if I had. And he's still there. It's just, it's a little different. Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. You remember that film? Yeah, it's called Threads. Was the name?
Yeah, of that's right. Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to talking about that again because
it was actually so it was actually a kid who didn't. It was a headless kid, which is weird, and then his doll, and then his like rag doll.
That's right.
Yeah. But he gave the rag doll gave him his head. But then at the end, the kid sewed the head back onto the rag doll. I mean, it sounds kind of lame, but
no, I'm telling.
I think it was moving for people. Like it was fun. It was fun to do.
Oh yeah, well you hit all the feels in the right places. I mean, like you see the sweet nature of, like I said, like just self-sacrifice in there, and then you see the guilt trip that the other character has as they all of a sudden realize that this other friend, or I'm not sure what you like, if it was just like that stuff or his stuffed animal or whatever, but you realize he basically goes through this moment of realization. What has just transpired here? We can't have this. This is horrible. So then you see him, repaying or paying it forward, so to speak, back to the other character. I mean, the whole thing, like I said, it made a lasting impression on me personally, just being in there, and I felt really just privileged to just be. I remember it was just you and I in that Maya lab that one time, and I just thought,
that dark room, that dark Maya lab, yeah.
I thought it was so cool just to be able to share that work in progress moment, and like I don't know, I thought that was
that's awesome,
just great. But
it's great. Thanks for remembering that.
Oh yeah, when you were younger and in college, honing your skills, can you identify like which materials or people made significant impacts to you leveling up as an animator, so to speak?
Yeah. So, let's see. I mean, when we started at school, it was you start out with drawing, a lot of drawing classes, right? And I did have a teacher who I'm actually still very close with, named Susan Harvey. I don't know if you remember Susan.
I do, yeah.
And she because I enjoyed drawing is what I really enjoyed doing. And so she was she was taught sketching, and then she taught life drawing and then painting. And maybe that doesn't have a ton to do with animation. I mean, life drawing does, obviously. But she was just, I don't know, there was just something special about her. There was a kindness to her, and I always loved her classes. And she loved the students, and I don't know, I just always enjoyed being in her class and being around her, and we're actually still really close. And then I had a teacher named Will Pacius. I don't know if you remember Will, or if you
Was he
had
the
him.
Lightwave teacher?
No, so the Lightwave teacher, I forgot his name. He was great. He always really excited, very animated.
The name sounds familiar.
I forgot the name of the guy that you're talking about. I forgot his name, but this guy Will Pacius, he actually passed away not very long ago. I heard.
Okay.
Which was unfortunate, but he just brought. What did he? There was just something about him. I don't even know if he was a very good animator, but you know what he was? He was a really good critiquer. He could critique really well, and he took it very seriously. And I really appreciated that. And I got a lot from him, actually. So Will Pacius. And then Dave Russell and I started taking kind of supplementary courses on the weekends. De Anza College, I don't know if you remember De Anza College.
I do.
So they had an animation program, and they somehow got some big grant for the animation program, and then they started bringing in guest like teachers to teach weekend classes. And they brought in a guy named Wayne Gilbert, who was an instructor at Sheraton, and he worked at ILM. And Dave and I started taking courses from him on the weekends, and I think I really got a lot out of. He was a traditionally 2D animator who'd moved into 3D, and he just loved animation. And I loved his courses. I looked forward to them. They were like on Saturdays and Sunday mornings, like really early. I remember Dave would come pick me up in his like this junky little red Daihatsu that he had, and we always hoping we'd actually get to the class without that car breaking down.
You get there and you're like, it's going to be a good day.
Right, we made it. It's going to be a good day. We made it. We made it to Wayne's class. And I still have a book because he was all about like, it was all about like force and what was the other terminology that he used? I should pull out his book. I've still got the book that he wrote. He wrote this thin sort of book that's just, it's just a great book. You could look up Wayne Gilbert and force, and I forgot the other, but really focused on physics and the physicality of the body, and probably one of the best courses that I took. But coming out of school, I still didn't feel like I knew how to animate. I still felt really not prepared. It was really on the job when I got surrounded by experienced animators that I really learned. I look at my animation then and I look at my animation now, and not that it's perfect now. I mean, you can always improve. There's always room for improvement, but man, what a difference. Just learning from people around you. That's probably where I learned most of my, and practice, right? I mean, just practice.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that stops either from your education. I think also too, as you move into your different jobs that you go into, like for instance, when you joined Double Fine, I'm sure that you also picked up additional little tidbits of gold, so to speak, from your fellow colleagues.
Yeah. And we, because I worked with a few people who had worked at Pixar. So that was actually really nice. They brought something really special, I think, to the animation team, because it's another level. When you get up to that level, it really is, you're taking it to another level. You're taking it to a level that really video games don't allow because you just don't have the budget or the time, right? But they were able to bring some real expertise that they learned at Pixar at their years there. A couple of them actually ended up going back, but that was that was great. It's nice to kind of surround yourself around people that are better than you. You know, when I'd look at demo reels, I'd always try to find people that were better animators than I was. Or that I could see had the potential. You know, maybe they were really young, but they were you know, you could really see that they had it already. It's something that was important to me to make sure that the people that we brought on were had more potential than me, or were just better than me, because then I knew I could learn from them. So because I know that can be kind of scary. You know, like, if I bring someone in better than I am I going to lose my job? You know, are they going to eclipse me or something? But I never tried to think that way. I always just tried to think, you know, what are they going to bring to the project, and then what can I learn from them? You know, and hopefully I can teach them something as well. But that's always been my philosophy.
What critical mistakes do some people make when they're starting out as animators?
That's a good question. So, I mean, I can just tell you experience. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the best way to.
Yeah, I got you on that one.
Yeah, you got me on that one. That one I haven't thought about. Man, I have to think about that, because I want to give a good answer, like a true answer.
Yeah.
And that's one that I haven't really thought about. Let me mull that over a little bit, and
sure,
we can come back to that one.
How about we put that in the back of your mind, and while you're thinking about that, tell us about the high points of your career so far.
Yeah, I think so. Working on Broken Age, which was a Kickstarter game that we did, I think that was probably a real high point for me. That was one that I had been an animation lead on Once Upon a Monster, but for Broken Age, Tim actually came and kind of tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I wanted to be the animation lead on that project, and that was really special to me, because I knew that was a special project for him. It meant a lot for the company. It was kind of a new direction that we were going. And that meant a lot that he had the faith in me that I would be able to pull that off. And I knew we were going to be going in a different direction on the animation. And that's scary. But that we finished that game, and that I'm really proud of that game. It turned out well. I'm proud of the animation in it. And it was stressful, really scary at times, you know, because with that game, we kind of pulled in the fans, and we kind of opened up the, kind of the secret box. We let everybody in to see how, you know, as Tim would say, how the sausage is made, you know,
how the sausage is made. That's cool.
That's what he said. And, you know, and so the whole thing was documented as well. So there's a whole documentary about it. If anyone's interested, anyone that's like interested in the game industry and how video games are made, they should watch The Double Fine Adventure. And it's like a 20-part documentary series.
Is that just on YouTube, or?
Yeah, I think you can watch it on YouTube for free, actually, which is crazy, because it's really super professional. 2-player productions did it. It's really pretty riveting, and it'll really pull you in, because we kind of really showed the great things that happen in video games and the horrible things that happen, and so there's some really high points during it, and there's some really low points, but I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that I got through it, and I feel like I'm a better animator. I feel like I'm a better manager, and probably just a better person. after that experience. So that was definitely a high point. Let's see. I mean, Brutal Legend is a game that I really loved working on that game. I think because I enjoy heavy metal, and it's just all heavy metal. I feel bad for the people that worked on it that maybe really dislike heavy metal.
They listen to Kenny G or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough for them. So I'm kind of lucky that I was a fan already, and it was just completely pulled into that world. That was a lot of fun to work on. We had a large animation team in the studio. I think we had maybe 8 animators or 9. That's which was really big for us.
Wow.
So that was really fun, like to have a large animation team like that. We had a couple of people from Pixar that came and worked on that one, and that was really fun to just to learn from them. So that was definitely a high point. Trying to think of anything else that. I mean, I've been lucky. I've been lucky to work on projects that I really am interested in, because I know that's not for I know that not everyone has been able to do that, and I think I've just been lucky to be at a company like Double Fine and to work with someone like Tim, because I just know that there's going to be challenges, and that's good, right? I mean, you want to be a little scared, because I think you're probably not progressing if you're not nervous or worried, right?
Yeah.
Those are not situations we like to be in, but I think that it's important to be in those situations, because I think that that's how you're going to grow as a person, for sure, is to take things on that you are not sure about. And I think that's kind of how Tim is, because he definitely takes things on that are unique, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. Like with Broken Age, or that Kickstarter game, he had no idea what he wanted to make, but he wanted the public, or at least the fans, to see that, so they could actually see the entire process going from nothing to a small seed to a story, to an entire game. That's terrifying, and then have the whole thing filmed and put out there to the public. I mean, that's crazy. So, but that was a high point working on that game, for sure.
What is it like to work for Tim Schafer, the Tim Schafer?
Yeah, it's. I think. I've worked with him a long time now, so I guess it's been 16 years, going on 17 years. So I do. As far as the way he works, I know how he works. I kind of know what to expect. I don't know what ideas are going to come out of his head, but he's a good person, and that's really nice to have. He's a good person. He cares about people. He is I don't use this term very often, but he really is, and it is kind of cliche, but he is a creative genius. I consider him a creative genius. And that can be difficult sometimes, right? Because sometimes it's hard to turn that hose off, that creative hose. Like I always imagine, I see those images of, you see like on YouTube, the firefighters trying to control the fire hoses that are out of control, and they're jumping on it. And yeah. I kind of feel like, sometimes I feel like that. Tim's the fire hose, and then we're just like, me and the producers are like jumping on it, trying to control the spewing of creativity.
That's a great analogy.
And it does feel like that sometimes. And he knows what he wants, and there's usually some kind of sacrifice to get there. But the nice thing is you always want to. He's the kind of person that you really want to please, like creatively. You want to do your best work because you want to make him happy, which is really kind of weird. I remember on Psychonauts, he would have an idea and he wouldn't want to tell the producer. And so he would just come directly to the programmer or the artist and like say, hey, can you just put this in? I really want this in, knowing that it was going to be difficult. It's probably you might have to work late and you might think that you'd get mad at the person for that, but you just end up doing it because you know that it's the right decision. I trust him now. Like I totally trust him because I remember on Psychonauts I was just like, why are we wasting our time on all these little things, these little details, these little side things, hardly anyone's going to see these things. Like, oh, the game's done. The game is, you've completed the missions. Why are we doing this whole nother set of animation so that someone can actually go back in after the game is completely finished and see these little scenarios. But now I realize that that's what makes those games so special.
Yeah.
It's those little details that, maybe 20% of the people will see it, but those 20% will be hooked. Like they'll be the biggest fans that you'll ever have because you've added those little gems for them. And and those are things that Tim finds important, and now I trust him with those, even though I know it might mean maybe some late nights or something, but I know that it's good. It'll pay off.
Well, I think it's a part of his signature too. Like his games are very recognizable. Like anytime I see one of his games comes out, I look at it and it's like, yeah, that is a Tim Schafer game.
Yeah, definitely has humor. Definitely story driven. Puzzles oftentimes. Mm-hmm. And great characters and a great world. And I mentioned that I was always like, I want to go into film, and but it's kind of like working on I don't want to say it's like working on a film, but you are working on a very story-driven type of narrative game. Mm-hmm. And that's and I love that. Lots of cinematics. I love when the scripts come. Like just today, we went through a reading of some new dialogue for Psychonauts 2, and I was just like chuckling, the whole way through it. Like it's really exciting to get that.
Who's the writer?
Tim.
Tim. Oh, Tim does all the writing. He does all the scripts.
Yeah. So with Psychonauts 1, Tim and Eric Wolpaw. I don't know if you know who Eric Wolpaw is. He was he wrote most of the dialogue for Portal.
I love that game.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was Portal 2 also. I don't remember. But anyway, really funny, super funny guy. So the two of them collaborated on the writing on Psychonauts, the first one. But then Tim has done all the writing for all of his games up to this point. So
okay.
Yeah, so with Psychonauts 2, we have a project lead, which is not Tim. He's always been the project lead before, but we have a new guy that's come in to be the project lead. But then Tim is still sort of the what would you call him?
The matriarch.
Yeah. He still controls the Psychonauts world, and he does all the writing. So the story is his with some collaboration, but the story and the characters is what he's bringing to it. So
I've watched a couple of the VDocs that have been put out, and it is pretty fascinating to just watch him as he's talking about, whether it's reminiscing about an older game or if he's talking about the game industry in general. There's a lot going on in that head of his, and I think that is a very rare thing to find. I think that there are folks who are like that, where it's like you said, the whole fire hose analogy totally makes sense, because I could see him constantly coming up with an idea after an idea after an idea, like building upon an initial brainstorm that he had and just doing concept ideation and doing iteration after iteration after that. So It's cool to hear you talk about that, just because it sounds like he just has just this wealth of creativity.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be in meetings with him. That are if they're meetings that are like you said, ideation. If it's a meeting that's just coming up with ideas, that's when he's super engaged in the meeting. If you're talking about finance or something, he's probably like, he has to do it because he's the president of the company. But what he really loves is when he can, really just, and he loves to collaborate, on ideas with people. He's not the type that will just, he'll lock himself away to write dialogue, but to actually come up with ideas for the world or for puzzles, he loves collaboration, and that makes it a lot of fun to work at a company like that. That's a lot of fun. When we worked on Rhombus of Ruin, Psychonauts and the Rhombus of Ruin, I loved those design meetings. They were really fun to be in, because you really felt like you could just say whatever you wanted, and you knew that you were going to come out of there with some cool ideas, and that hopefully a little piece of yours is still in there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, but he's also just a good person. I think good human being, which is nice to have.
Shifting the focus back over to just your animating style, how would you describe your animating style or your methodology? How you approach your day-to-day tasks of animating?
Yeah, for me, so I don't take a lot of footage. I don't take a lot of, a lot of people like to record themselves and stuff. I'll act things out. I'll stand up and I'll act things out, and I'll just kind of feel it. I don't know what it is. And I'm sure most animators are like this, but I'm trying to make it feel natural. I'm like, okay, does this feel natural? Is this arm movement natural? Where would I put my arm here? And I'll just kind of go through those motions, and until I get something that really feels like that feels comfortable. Mm-hmm. I do try to do gags because I work for a company where our games are very funny, mm-hmm. And I always enjoy making Tim laugh. Especially like little, I like to put little, like if I'm doing cinematic, and I think I learned this probably from the Muppets. This is like Jim Henson's thing, I think. Like weird background things that are going on. Like things that are not, that don't really pertain to what's going on in the foreground, but it's just kind of a weird thing that's happening behind.
Like you have to look for it, but if you see it, you're like, oh, look at that.
Yeah, just like some goofy thing that's going on back there. That I like to sneak those things in when I can, and I appreciate that stuff because not everyone will see it, but the people that do see it, I think they get a laugh out of it. Methodology. I'll sit for a while and just kind of think things through, mm-hmm. And then just do a quick blocking. Pretty standard, what most animators do probably. I'll do a quick blocking pass, and then I do sometimes start adding some detail earlier than I should. So I think this goes back to when I was a kid and I would draw, and I don't know if Rusty. I don't know how much. You probably enjoyed art. I'm assuming that's why you ended up at Cogswell.
Oh yeah.
I remember that I would focus in on like the eyeballs, and so I would render out these beautiful eyes. When I say render out, drawing, with pencil. Mm-hmm. And then I would go, oh, okay, now I'm going to do the head. And I'd realize, oh man, the eyes aren't in the right positions, but I've spent all this time on the eyeballs, and then I have to go and try and erase, once you've done these dark pencil marks, you can't erase it,
Exactly.
It's always going to show up. And sometimes I do that in animation. I'll get hung up on something, and I'll, before I've got the whole thing blocked out, I'll like get excited, and then I'll put all this detail somewhere where I shouldn't. So that's something. Don't do that. I would just tell people it's a bad habit. And I always do think that maybe that comes from back in my early days of drawing, getting hung up on something and just focusing on it or too early. You really need to sketch the thing out, and then start slowly adding, the texture and the detail to it. Same with animation. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. And the reason why I asked that question in the first place was just because at Double Fine, all of your characters are memorable in terms of their silhouette, their archetype, the way that the proportions are intentionally exaggerated for a lot of characters. And so the reason why I asked was I was just curious, when you look at a character for the first time, like when you were working on Psychonauts, for example, and you're looking at Raz, like, were there certain parts to him that kind of spoke to you first and got you inspired? Like, how exactly would his walk cycle be versus how would his idle animation be versus his attack animation?
Oh yeah. That's a good question. So our character designs, at least for Psychonauts, and for a lot of our worlds still, are designed by Scott Campbell. He'll do this character designs. He does contract work with us now, really sometimes extreme proportions, really asymmetrical a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Just really fun characters to animate, but sometimes kind of hard to figure out. Like one example is Mia. I don't know if you remember Mia. So Mia was, some people call her Milla, but her name's Mia. So she's a Psychonaut. She's got, these super long arms and super long fingers. So really weird proportions and really challenging to animate because she's just not standard type of character. Mm-hmm. And it does take a lot of sort of planning and a lot of rework really with her. But one thing I'll do is I will think about, the nice thing about working on Tim's games is he really has backstories to most of his characters. So you can ask him about them. And let's say someone like Raz, right? Mm-hmm. We know Raz is he comes from a circus family, right? Mm-hmm. And so he comes from a family of showmen. And so you're probably gonna have that even in his idols, right? He's probably gonna have somewhat of some showmanship, Mm-hmm. I had to animate his dad, Augustus, and I think that Augustus would always have a little bit of showmanship in his moves. And someone like Coach, who, I don't know if you remember Coach Oleander. Oh, yeah. Really, short guy, always wanted to be in the military, somewhat self-conscious, a little bit of a failure, and almost like overconfident. Uh-huh. So you have sort of these you have these stories that you can think about, and then you can try and build those emotions into just their breathing, how they stand, how their like default idle pose is. We find that really important, and we try to explore that before we move on and actually start doing like a full animation set on a character. We really try to explore where that character has come from, and I think it's really helpful. I think it helps bring the personality out to the player without them even having to say anything. So I hope it comes through.
Oh, I will tell you. Yes, it does. Because and I think that's one of the biggest things about a lot of the games that, especially from Double Fine, it makes complete sense when you talk about Tim Schafer actually providing some sort of backstory to each character. Why that character exists? What is the purpose of this particular character? And I could completely see for someone like yourself as an animator that acts as a springboard creatively for you to be able to all of a sudden go, okay, I know that based off of this backstory that this character, like you said, like he'll have an idle animation that will probably accentuate these parts more than the other parts versus a character within the same game that perhaps will have more of the opposite parts that are being accentuated more than others and that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of one of the beauty of animation really is just you're handed kind of a kind of a laundry list synopsis of, okay, there you have this character. This is the kind of trials and tribulations they've been through as a result. Maybe the character has been maimed, or maybe the character is socially awkward and has some sort of weird tick, some sort of physical tick that they do or something. And so as a result, then you will just all of a sudden go, oh man, it'd be sweet if we did this here. And then we add this or there. And in terms of the animation, like, oh, go ahead.
No. Finish what you're saying here. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in terms of the animations, it must be just a field day for you to be able to go back and forth, not only with the characters, but also even, I'm sure he has plenty of information, like just creative information for the environments. Yeah.
You can learn a lot because, I mean, the worlds are unique, and that's something I should mention. We were talking earlier about working with Tim and what that's like. He really enjoys animation. He likes to watch animation, and that's great. Like, that's really nice to have the creative lead being having a real vested interest in what you're trying to create. Mm-hmm. And that's. I love having that. Like, some people maybe want to be left alone, but I love that he wants to give input, and I trust his input because he's come up with these characters, right? They've come out of his head. And I was mentioning we were talking about having sort of these backstories, and just the other day for Psychonauts 2, I was reading through a character doc that he had written, and I won't go into detail about it. But it was 4 pages of this particular character's backstory. Their likes and dislikes, and their family situation, and everything you'd kind of need to know about a person. And that was so amazing to have, and then to be able to start thinking about, okay, how would what is this person's confidence level like at this point, or how would they stand? Would they be slumped over? Would they be confident? It was just like this little treasure trove of nuggets that you could call on to come up with an idea for a character's even the way the character walks, right, or the way the character runs. It's a real gift to have that.
Yeah. A question I have, it's more of a technical question. I know that last time I saw you were working in Maya. What software packages are you using currently, or do you love to use while you're doing your day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, Maya is still sort of, it's the standard that we use. We have some proprietary, there's some in-house tools, like animation tools. We call it the animation toolbox.
Uh-huh.
But it just little helps. It just has some helps for us to fix things or to edit things more quickly. But it's pretty standard version of Maya that we still animate with. As far as the engine goes, we've switched over to Unreal. We used to always build our own engines. Mm-hmm. And the last game that Headlander, that came out, that was a game that Lee Petty led. That was the last game that we used what's called our Buddha engine, which was the engine that was designed for Brutal Legend. Okay. And then when we made Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin, that's the first game that we used the Unreal engine. So for hooking up animation, it's actually really nice. It has these really nice blend spaces that you can put all of your locomotion in, and you can make adjustments pretty easily. So for animators, using Unreal has been really nice. I know for programmers it can be a little more difficult because you're dealing with someone else's engine, for engineers, but for artists it's been nice. So we do have that now that we're using. But my day to day is Maya. We just started using a I got to remember the name of it. I should have written it down. It's a program that we just started using. We've only used it once for doing critiques, animation critiques.
Okay.
Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it. Maybe I'll have to tell you later, and then you can mention it.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of it. Anyway, because we've just started using it, but it's basically a way that we can upload all of our animation and then do drawovers and take notes. Usually I'm always just, because I work remotely, especially, they'll open up an animation file, then I'll open up the same file, then we'll kind of watch it at the same time, and then I'll, if someone wants to give some feedback, they'll either verbally do it or I see them kind of act it out,
Mm-hmm.
But then they're like, oh, you got a screen share. I can't see because I'm screen sharing. Can you turn that off so I can see what you're doing? And it's a little bit of a pain. So now we have this program that we use where you can just draw right on top of each frame, whichever frame you want to change, or just type in some notes, and then it syncs what I'm looking at because it's I don't know, it's a HTML5 or something. So it runs through the browser, and so I can see what they're drawing, they can see what I'm drawing. So that's been, for the one time that we've used it, it's been really helpful, and so I think that we're going to be using that going forward. But that's just like a third party, animation critique tool is what that is. But Maya is the what we use every day.
Yeah, it's kind of the go-to software.
Yeah, I've been using that since, when we were at Cogswell. I remember when Maya 1 came out, because it was Power Animator before that. It was Alias's Power Animator.
Alias Wavefront. Oh my gosh,
Alias Wavefront. Yeah, Power Animator. It ran on those I think it was those SGI machines.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And and then I remember when Maya came out for NT. I remember for Windows NT, but it was crashing all the time, and it wasn't very good. So we're still using it, and I like Maya. It's a powerful program. I don't dig into all of the options that it has. I don't know if it makes you a better animator or not. I probably should dig into some. I don't use layers that often, animation layers. We've had some problems exporting out, and then like one of the layers doesn't export out, and then we can't. So then we're like missing half our animation. So, sometimes I'm risk averse, and so if I have trouble with it once, I don't want to use it again once in a while. Sometimes. Yeah.
As the animation lead, can you describe a bit of your process for getting things done with your team? I know that as a lead, you have to find a way to generate that synergy with your fellow animators. Can you describe a bit about that?
Yeah, so I should just clarify at this point. So I was the studio animation lead, and I guess technically, that's probably still my title. But since I went remote, I'm not the animation lead on Psychonauts 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I said, there's no way that I can do that and not be in the studio. You really need somebody there who's working directly with everybody, can be in all the meetings. So I've just taken a role as a senior animator. What I am doing is I'm leading the cinematics team.
Oh, okay, right on.
So when I told our new animation lead on Psychonauts, I said, well, if you'd like, I can take the cinematics on. That way you can kind of focus on the gameplay, and you can go to all the meetings that I don't have to go to. But I can, but I can talk to you a little bit about when I was the animation lead.
Yeah, please do.
So can you tell me again the specific question? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just curious about as you were in the position of being an animation lead, what's your process for getting things done on your team in terms of just how you create that synergy with your fellow animators, your kind of your pipeline process, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I try to understand what the skill set, because everybody's really good at certain things, right? Even in animation, someone might be really good at subtle motion. Someone might be really good at fast, explosive type of animation. And I try to, know what the animators are good at and what they enjoy. And so I try to give tasks out based on what I think that they will like to work on. I try to be really conscious of that and talk to each animator about it. And sometimes that means that the lead has to take on the stuff that they don't want to do. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. But that's just kind of part of the job. You kind of, because you're really trying to make those animators feel, you want them to love their job, and you want them to enjoy what they're doing every day. I mean, you can't always give them everything that they want, but you try to do that, or at least I would try to do that as much as I could. Let's see. As far as, I'm just trying to think of what information would be helpful here.
Like if you had let's say like you receive your latest task of what it is that you have to animate. Can you describe a bit of like, do you have kind of a creative powwow where you kind of just meet up with your team and you go over just different types of ideas of how characters would behave? Or like, I know that you mentioned a little bit earlier about how sometimes someone will act something out, and that kind of caught my attention there.
Yeah. Well, sometimes what we would do is, if we had a new character, is we'll do a character kickoff meeting. Mm-hmm. And we'll do that with the animators, and then we'll do it with Tim and just kind of ask any questions that we might have. We'll also have the character who's going to do the rig, or who has done the rig, or is working on it. And the rig, just everybody knows, is just the bones and the controls, that go inside of the character. We'll have all those people present so that we can start talking about what this character does. Sometimes we'll have a designer there so that we can talk about what are going to be the needs of this character. Mm-hmm. So an example would be, all right, we have this character who needs what we would call a move set, or a basic animation set. And so that would consist of a walk or a run, a breathe, what we call a fidget, which is, whatever, maybe it's like scratching their nose or shifting their weight, So we'll do a couple of those fidgets, and we'll usually just, sometimes we'll explore that together. Sometimes we'll just explore it on our own, and then we'll just show the team. We do what's called weeklies. Some call it dailies, if they actually show their work every day, but we do it every week. So once a week, we gather as an animation team, and we go through all of the animation that's been done in that week, and do the critiques, and then give feedback.
Do you ever do any whiteboarding sessions too, where like you're just doing these super fast gesture drawings and you're showing kind of here's his beginning state and here's his in-between state, here's his where he ends up kind of thing?
Not really. I mean, we'll do what we do now is, now that we have this program that we can draw right on top of the character, we'll do that. Sometimes we'll do some storyboards if it's a cinematic. We won't always do storyboards if there's time or if there's not time. It just depends. You work kind of lean. And so you usually just start with, so let's say, I've worked with outsourcers quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so what I would do in that case is I would, we'd get the dialogue, and then they'd get the dialogue recorded. And then I would then create just a 3D layout, which is, it's just so your audience knows. They may know all this already, but it's basically all of your cameras with all of your characters, and they're placed in the right positions. The dialogue is all timed out. And then we'd sit together as a team with Tim there, and we'd show him these layouts to make sure that the story is being told the way that he wants it to be told. And then he gives any feedback that he has. And then I will go and make those changes before we ship it to an outsourcing group. So they would get this layout that has the characters in the frame where they're supposed to be, or going in and out of the frame the way they're supposed to. The timing, the general timing is there. The timing of the dialogue is all there. And then they can get started, and what we usually do is with the animators in-house or outside, for the outsourcing, is we'll have them take it to a blocking stage, not put any real detail, so that then we can critique it at that point before they get too far. Because you don't want to get too far, and then it's kind of a disaster if you take it all the way to final without showing anybody.
Yep.
Yeah, so that can be bad. So we try to make sure that we see it before it gets too far. As the lead, really I was there. I was just there as a support. I was there to help, track things. I was there to make sure that everybody knew what they were supposed to be doing. That nobody was lost or or confused or idle. I tried to always be collaborative, and like I mentioned before, I always tried to hire animators that were either better than I was, or a young animator that's up and coming, very talented, and that made my job easy, really. You know what I mean? It's really, if you hire the right people. It's not that hard leading a group, but I was kind of, when Tim needed to meet, I would meet with Tim directly, and then I would take notes, pass that information down to the team if the whole team couldn't be there. But I always like to include the entire team in the weeklies with Tim there. I think that's the most helpful. That way they can ask the question, instead of me going back and asking Tim the question that they might have. That's weird. And we're a small enough company that I don't think that that's necessary.
Yeah.
If you had a large team of, 30 animators or 40 animators, I can see where that would be a nightmare for a director, but we're small enough that we don't need to do that.
Transitioning into more about Psychonauts 2, I know that the amount of information you're allowed to disclose is pretty thin at this point because you guys are still very much in production on the game.
Yeah.
But I'm going to attempt to ask you high-level questions, and perhaps we can get a little bit things here and there. So one of the things that I thought was super cool that I wanted to talk about was the fact that this game was made possible by pledges from the global gaming community on fig.co. You just do a search for, I think it was Psychonauts, which to date, I looked on there, it's generated $3.8 million. And that by itself is just an incredible feat, because the gaming industry, like typically when you have more established gaming studios, I've never really seen this type of approach before. I mean, obviously, if you're more of an indie developer, I think that was kind of more the case. But even so, I think that this whole approach is really brilliant, because, I mean, it almost sounds like it's helping to pave the way in terms of the development cycle of the game itself. But it makes me wonder, too, if it will also help with the publishing part of it.
Yeah, so... I mean, we started the crowdfunding thing with Broken Age, and I think that was with this one we actually had a property, right? We had an IP that people knew, and a lot of people loved the first game. The first time we did it, we didn't have anything, right? We just had the studio, and we had Tim saying, "Hey, we want to make an adventure game. Who wants to help us make this adventure game," right?
Who wants this one?
Yeah. Right. And that one I think we raised $3.4 million for that.
Okay.
Now that did not cover all the development costs. We ended up having to cover quite a bit of that out of the studios, just profits from other games. But that was kind of a eye opener for the studio to say, hey, because we've worked with publishers. We generally work with publishers, and we've had ups and downs, right? I mean, Psychonauts was canceled, and then picked up by another publisher. But very scary, very, very scary moments, where we thought that was it. We thought that was it for the whole company. And then Brutal Legend, same thing. Brutal Legend got canceled. And we've had other games get canceled, unannounced games get canceled, and then we even had to have layoffs once because of a pretty large game got canceled by the publisher. And so I think Tim was just kind of like, hey, is there another way that we can do this, or at least partially do this, and also get fans to have a vested interest in it. So with Fig, it's a little bit different because it's crowdfunding, but people can actually invest in the game. They can invest relatively small investments and actually be, and if there's profits, they can actually receive profits out of the game.
Oh, sweet.
Which is pretty crazy. But that's so you can go two ways. You can either be like more like a Kickstarter style where you're like, I just want to support the game. I'm going to, throw in my $25 or whatever, or whatever it is. Or you can, I forgot what the cutoff is for the investment. I forgot what it is, but you can say, hey, I actually want to be a small investor or a large investor if you wanted to, and you would actually receive some royalties off the game. So this is the first time that we've done a game with this model. And that actually that helped us get the game going. I mean, that's we do have a publisher now, so we have a publishing partner. So we have this crowdfunding, and then we also have which we knew we'd probably need a publishing partner because with video games and crowdfunding, I mean, they're just for a relatively large game like Psychonauts, you still can't raise the kind of cash that you would need to do a full-blown, 3D platformer,
right?
A pretty large game, and so we do have a publishing partner now to help with that. But then we have these these backers and these investors who are vested in it, and it's cool. I mean, with Broken Age, we really opened it up. And we even had like these backer forums that just only backers could come into, and we'd post stuff. They could ask questions. They could participate in the development of the game in a small way. This time around, this time around, I think we've because now we have a publishing partner also. We haven't really opened it up as much. And we're showing some early stuff, though. We're showing some pretty early levels and things like that. But we're doing it a little bit different, a little more closed door than before. But yeah, it's exciting. It's kind of it's just a different way of doing it.
Well, and you get in touch with your fans too. I mean, the fact that I was looking on there, I think there are somewhere in, I want to say over 24,000 people have come forward and made that 3.8 million a reality. And I think that that's just got to be a validating moment for everyone at Double Fine to be able to see that and be like, yeah, wow, okay, we're going to do this.
Yeah, especially because we did it once, and this is actually the third game that we've crowdfunded. Massive Chalice was also crowdfunded. It is nice to have that, but it's also it's risky too, right? Because you have these fans who've put money in, their hard-earned money, and some people, that's a real stretch. Even $25 can be difficult and can be a sacrifice for them, and some of them expect a lot from that, and so you definitely are taking somewhat of a risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking, and I guess the fans feel that way as well. So
Yeah.
That makes it fun.
In terms of the folks who have not played Psychonauts, could you give the listeners a synopsis of what the first Psychonauts game was about, and then, if you can, where Psychonauts 2 begins?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Psychonauts is a story of this boy. I think he's 10. I hope I got that right. He's 10 or 11. I should know that by now.
I was going to say, come on, Ray.
I know the age, though. The age I get, and he lived with he had a circus family, and he has these psychic powers, and he realized he has these powers, but his dad is like super against, this weird ability that he has. And he ends up finding out about this. There's this organization called the Psychonauts, and he knows about it because he reads these comic books, or I don't know if you'd call them comic books, but they're these sort of serials that he reads called Psychic Adventures. So he's learned about this organization, and then he finds out about this camp that you can go to. Kids with psychic powers can go to learn to be a psychonaut and to sort of hone these psychic abilities. So he ends up leaving his family in the circus and ends up at this camp. And then once he's there, he starts realizing that there's some really pretty dark things that are going on at this camp. And so Raz sort of starts uncovering these sort of diabolical plan that this particular guy is trying to implement. And he does this through, as you wander around, you meet all these interesting people, and a lot of them are somewhat, they've got issues, like mental, psychological issues. And you have the ability, or you're taught when you're at this camp, that you can actually jump into these people's minds. And so you end up jumping into these different people's minds that have all kinds of weird things going on with them. And you get to explore their sort of psyche. And you're sort of you're finding clues, and you're solving puzzles each time you go into one of these minds. And so, anyway, if you haven't played the game, I don't want to spoil it for you, but Raz lives through the experience.
He survives.
He survives. He becomes a psychonaut. And at the end, I don't know how much I want to give away. It's been so long. At the end of the game, you end up flying off on the Psychonauts jet with the actual Psychonauts, Mia, Sasha, and Coach, and Lily, who's kind of the love interest in the game. And then where Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin picks up, which is the PSVR game that I was talking about earlier, that picks up right where Psychonauts 1 ended, in the jet. So when the game starts, you're actually in a jet. Mm-hmm. in that jet that you left.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So, but you don't have to have, you don't need to have, you will not have needed to play Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin to get what's going on in the beginning of Psychonauts 2. Okay. So, but there was this mission. So when Psychonauts 1 ended, there's this mission where they come and they say, hey, Lily, who's that love interest, her dad, Truman, has been kidnapped. And you're like, oh, we need to go save him. So that's when Psychonauts 1 ends on this like kind of cliffhanger, right? Mm-hmm. You've taken off to go on this, your first mission as a Psychonaut. And that mission is the Rhombus of Ruin. Okay, so that's the mission that you end up accomplishing that mission, which is the PSVR game. And then Psychonauts 2 picks up right after you've accomplished that mission, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that mission ends on the jet. You've finished. You've escaped on this jet again, and Psychonauts 2 picks up on that jet. If that makes sense.
As well it should.
Yeah, and so you're headed to the Psychonauts headquarters, which you've never seen the Psychonauts headquarters before, because you've always just been in camp, right? You've either been in camp, you've been in an insane asylum, or you've been in people's minds. And so this is your first time now actually going to the Psychonauts headquarters, and that's where Psychonauts 2 will pick up.
That's super cool. And I've actually watched some of the videos at the fig.co Psychonauts page. Oh, it looks so good.
Oh yeah, we showed the first level, the quarry level, which is on the outside of the Psychonauts headquarters. So there's this big sort of quarry that they've dug out, and that's where because the Psychonauts have been around a really long time, and so it's kind of like, they've kind of as the organization has evolved, they've just sort of built up on top of it, so you have kind of the old and you have the new, and so yeah, you get to explore the headquarters, which are looking really cool, and that quarry looks really cool. It's really fun to traverse and stuff, so I think it'll be a really great place for people to start. So Psychonauts is a platformer, but it's sort of a Tim Schafer platformer, which makes it a little bit unique, where there are puzzles, but there's also a lot of story exploration throughout, and so it's pretty unique. So it's a platformer, but you pause quite often to talk to characters, to find clues. And so, yeah, it's a unique type of game. So it's almost like an adventure game platformer, if that makes sense.
It definitely does make sense, just because a lot of games these days are almost kind of shying away from having more of like that graphic adventure, that story-based adventure, whether it's a platformer or point and click or what have you. I personally have always been a big fan of story-driven games. I love a good story. I love getting to know characters, and I've noticed that there has been a bit of a trend with more of the larger studios and publishers where they're focusing mainly on a online multiplayer experience, and they're really sacrificing a lot of the single player campaign or the single player story. And so that's something that I think, obviously Tim is very gifted at being able to flesh out these worlds from his mind, but also just the fact that you guys have stuck with the idea that the story plays just a vital role in your games. And I think that it'll be a sad day if that ever goes away, and hopefully it won't. I'm hoping that it'll bounce back a bit, just because I think the gaming community has been very outspoken with noticing, hey, you're kind of putting the story component of this game on the back burner, and as a result, there is not nearly the level of emotional attachment that the gamers have with these characters. Yeah. I think that was like, for me, I'll use myself as an example. I'm a huge Halo guy. I've always loved the Halo video game franchise. Yeah. However, the most recent versions of the game, I find myself not enjoying it as much, and I think one of the reasons for that is because they kind of removed Master Chief from a lot of it, and they try to introduce this other character, but I had already been through all of these alien worlds and adventures with Master Chief. I just wanted my Spartan 117, right? And I'll be a happy camper. Another example of that, kind of bouncing off of that, is you have these other games where they will introduce like a character to you that you're supposed to control and that sort of thing. But then at the end of the game, I don't have any like just feverish attachment to the character. And I think that's so, I don't know, for me, it's such an important aspect to a game, especially games that obviously there needs to be some sort of story there, because that's what creates the purpose. If there's no purpose to the game, then it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm playing kind of this casual, maybe not necessarily a casual game, but I'm playing this game, but why am I playing it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It does make me kind of sad, because I'm kind of like you. I really enjoy a linear story-driven experience. And they're expensive to make, right? They're expensive to make, and they don't have a lot of replayability. And so I think that publishers are just leery of it, right? I mean, I just finished Inside. I'm a little behind.
Oh, that game is so good.
And I won't spoil it for anybody, but because I loved Limbo, and then I was so stoked when when Inside was coming out, and I love that it was still a linear driven. There's definitely a story there. You've got to kind of figure out what the story is. There's no dialogue or anything, but a linear experience that I can just sit down by myself at night. I don't have to deal with people yelling at me, or it's just it's a personal it's a personal experience. So yeah, I'm really drawn. I love the single player campaign. That's why I think I loved Red Dead Redemption.
That is one of my all time favorite games.
It's so good. I mean, but it was. I mean, and you could explore all you wanted. You could spend as much time sitting on a train shooting birds if that's what you wanted to do. But still, it was a linear experience that I loved the idea that it was going to end like a book, or a film, and I'm not knocking multiplayer games. I just me personally, I'd like to see more kind of larger budget linear experiences, but I also the economics behind it. I can understand why there are fewer. I mean, it's nice that sort of the indies have kind of picked that up, though, in a lot of cases. I'm just trying to think of some examples. I mean, going back a little bit, like I love Sword and Sorcery. Mm-hmm. That's like an absolute joy to play. Beautiful, fun, weird story, little puzzles. Like I loved that game. I absolutely loved it. And those games just really leave an impression on me. And I can take my time. Maybe it's because I'm older. I don't know. I can take my time. I can play it for 20 minutes. I can turn it off. My son, he's into video games, and he plays Destiny or Overwatch, and he can't just turn it off, right? I mean, people are depending on him. If he just shuts it off, then they're going to hate him. Uh-huh. Where I just like games I can just turn off any time that I want to, and then I can pick them back up, where I left them. But
Overwatch actually is a good example of this is fascinating, because Overwatch was built from the ground up to be this multiplayer only experience. However, Blizzard was clever in the sense that they have made all of these pre-rendered episodic cinematics to tell the story, because I think they had an aha moment where it's like, wait a minute, we need to get the players invested in these characters. Mm-hmm. It's very much a rich character-driven game. How can we do this without having a single-player story? Yeah. And so it's brilliant. I mean, just looking at it, it's like, okay, now that has satisfied my desire to be able to know, okay, if I'm going to play as Pharah or Diva or whoever it is, why am I choosing this character? Yeah, they have different types of character attributes. They have different gameplay mechanics, but why? What is drawing me to this character? Why do these characters exist in this world? And so that is an example of how they were able to overcome that. But in terms of what you folks do at Double Fine, I just love the fact that it's oozing, just brimming at the top with all this personality and character and just backstory that provides that purpose.
Yeah, and that definitely comes from Tim. I mean, that's his love. That's what he loves to do. He hates it when people say, "Oh, you should have made movies." He always gets mad about that. He's like, "No, I make games. I make games. I make games though with characters that people can get to know and can kind of fall in love with." And yeah. I think they probably with like Team Fortress 2, right? It seemed like definitely a multiplayer shooter that suddenly though I think people wanted to know about these characters. And they wanted to know about their personalities, and so they made all these cinematics.
They were great.
Yeah, they're really really well done, really funny, beautifully animated. But like you said with like Halo, I think I played the first 3 Halos, but I always played the single player campaigns because that's what I loved about it. And then when like the new, I think it was Star Wars. Was it the Star Wars Battlefront, the first one that came out? Mm-hmm. I don't think it didn't. Did it not have a? Because I don't think it had a. Did it not have a single player campaign?
No, it did not.
I think that's why I didn't. I think that's why I didn't get it.
Well, did you hear about how the sequel, they actually are pushing the fact that they now are including, it sounds like a really well thought out single player story.
Yeah, see, that'd be great. Like I would probably really, and then maybe I'd play through the linear experience and then I would go back and then want to play the multiplayer afterward. But yeah, I like a story for sure.
From going back to Psychonauts, from an animation perspective, what goals are you hoping to achieve in Psychonauts 2 that perhaps didn't exist in the first game? And what I mean by that is just looking at the videos that you have up currently, it's obvious that you're dealing with hardware that is capable of just much more high fidelity experiences. And I noticed, the animations are really, I'm not just saying this just because I have you on the show, but just really I'm watching it and there is a lot more articulation with everything that's going on.
Yeah, we definitely are trying to push the fidelity of the animation, with more stretch and just hopefully we can do smoother transitions between the different anims, and working with another engine, more mature engine, I think will help drive that. But then just a fidelity level we hope is a step up, and it will be. We're better animators than we were back then, and we've learned a lot, and I think that we'll achieve that for sure. The other thing is we'll be working with for cinematics. We'll definitely end up working with some outsourcing groups, and we're looking at different studios right now, and we're trying to making sure that it's a studio that can hit those targets that we really want to hit for this game. So I think the fidelity of the animation will be a lot higher than it was originally. So,
how large is the animation team on this particular project?
Well, we're still really early, and so right now there's only 3 of us.
Okay.
So we have me, and then we have two other animators in the studio. But we'll probably ramp up, hire a couple more in-house animators, and then we will work with 1 or 2 outsourcing groups for some cinematics and maybe for some gameplay stuff. But all of the RAS animation, that'll all be done in-house. Some of the NPC animation, so far we've all just done it in-house, but we may do some. We may work with some outsourcers on that as well. But when we work with the outsourcers, what we usually try to do is we'll have like a few really key cutscenes or cinematics that we'll keep in-house that to allow Tim to like look at them often, and then we'll outsource a lot of the other stuff. But there's just I think we'll have to. We just won't be able to do it. And we don't want to hire a bunch of people and then lay people off. You know, that's just hard on everybody. And so sometimes what we'll do is we will maybe hire a couple of contract animators to come into the studio. We did that on the Rhombus of Ruin. We hired 2 contract animators to come in. They were supposed to come in for, like a month, and then they ended up being there for like 3 or 4 months helping us. Usually ends up that way.
Wait, you can't leave yet.
Yeah, we got to work on our estimates, I guess. It always takes longer than you think. I know you probably understand that. It just always takes longer than you think it's going to take.
We always have the initial it'll be fine meeting, and then later on we're like, we need them for another 6 months to a year.
Yeah, no, exactly. So the nice thing with working with the outsourced group is that they can scale, right? They can ramp up and ramp down as need be. And so that works out pretty well. So at least it has for me in the past. So we'll see how it goes this time.
Even though it sounds like you guys aren't too far along yet within the development cycle, is there a particular character that has been your favorite to work on thus far?
Yeah, there's one that I've worked on for Psychonauts 2, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't talk about it, but that's which I shouldn't have even answered because that's kind of lame for me to even say that and then say I can't talk about it. It's like,
you tease.
Nobody wants to hear that. So I'm just trying to think. That was a fun character to work with, and hopefully I'll get to do some actual cinematics and stuff with this particular character. One character though that I do still love, that everyone that's a Psychonauts fan is Dr. Lobato. I've always loved working with Dr. Lobato. In the first game and then in the Rhombus of Ruin, he was really fun to animate. I just love that character. He's just a total goofball. He's evil, but I don't know. I don't want to say he's dumb. He's not really dumb. He's just a little crazy and a little off, and so it makes it really fun to stick really weird things into his animation, weird movements, and he's great. Dr. Lobato's one of my favorites to animate. Mia is one of the harder ones for me to animate. I don't know why, but she's difficult. But we have there's some really cool new characters coming up. Like whenever I see Scott Campbell's designs come in. Oh, sorry, I dropped something there. Whenever I see Scott's designs come in, I just get super excited because when I first interviewed at Double Fine, I drove up. They were in this. It was like a countertop or a shelf. What was it? It was like a counter building shop. Like it wasn't built for making video games. It was a garage is what it was. Mm-hmm. But I went in there and there were these drawings on the wall that Scott Campbell had done of some of the characters from the first game. When they were just doing, they were still in pre-production. And I just fell in love with them. Like I was like, oh, I've got to work on this. Just looking at those characters, I was like, I've got to work on this game. And every time one of his characters comes in, it's that same feeling. I get excited to animate the character. Mm-hmm. There's some fun ones. I think people are going to enjoy them. I think they will. If they enjoyed the first one and they enjoyed the characters of the first game, I think they're going to really, really dig this one.
I think the final question I have for you is, other than the games that you've worked on, do you have any websites that folks can go see your animation mojo, as it were? This is your opportunity to plug your good works.
Yeah, no, I don't put, so here's the problem when you when you've worked at a studio for as long as when you've worked there that long, you don't promote yourself very much because, you're not really out looking for the next opportunity, I guess. Sure. And so, I don't have really much of anything out there. Like I haven't put a reel together in a really long time because it would take me a year to dig through everything. So unfortunately, I don't really have anything out there. I mean, the closest thing is people could. I did a GDC talk a couple of years ago on the animation process of Broken Age, and that's pretty.
There you
I think
go.
that's pretty-
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting for people. So they could just kind of just search GDC, probably Ray Crook, like animation process for Broken Age or something like that. You'd find it. It's not in the vault. I think it's actually available for anyone to view. And you might find that pretty interesting. I go kind of deep into how we developed the style and then what, the process that we used and the workflow that we used for that specific game. So that might be interesting for people, but I don't have a specific website to give for that, but you could probably easily find it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just I would encourage people to go check out the Double Fine Adventure documentary. I think that if you like video games, it's fascinating and it's really well done, and I think it'll give people a lot of insight as well as kind of understanding of what it takes to make a game. Really educational. Like any students, I always tell them, like, if you're studying animation or you're interested in getting into video games, go watch the whole thing. Go watch the whole documentary. It'll either encourage you to get in the industry or discourage you, depending on how you look at it, because it's a pretty honest look at what it takes and what it's like to work in the industry. So I would encourage people to check that out. Yeah.
That totally works. Absolutely. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this. I've been looking forward to chatting with you ever since we got this set up, because I actually did not know that Psychonauts 2 was going on until just recently. And I was thinking, man, I've got to talk to Ray and see if I can get him on the show. So thank you very much for your time. I know that you're crazy busy. You've got your family and everything else, but this is definitely a great opportunity for us to be able to talk.
Yeah, no, thanks, Russ. I appreciate the opportunity. I hope it's helpful for people. I remember when I was a student and just studying, I remember how excited I would get, just either to meet someone from the industry or listen to some, something that they said might spark some kind of some motivation or an idea in somebody, or just get them excited.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that about wraps it up this episode. Be sure to check out patreon.com/Joygasm and subscribe to get the most out of the show, as well as gain early access to each podcast episode. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on SoundCloud.com/Joygasm TV. Last but not least, search Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.